Today we are going to talk about Russian tortoise care, more specifically, the variety of substrate choices you have when furnishing your Russian tortoise enclosure. I'm going to start with my favorite and perhaps the most successful substrate you can choose, which is a mix of coconut fiber and clay sand. Coconut fiber comes with the brand names Tropical Soil, Jungle Bed, Bed of Beast, Eco Earth, Plantation Soil, any number of brand names, but it's all essentially the same and all just as successful in the mix, and it's typically going to come in brick form. This will expand a great deal, so don't over-purchase that, but you can purchase it with the pre-made bags as well. However, mixing it does tend to be quite easy, so it's not necessary to purchase it as a pre-made form like you see here, and it does tend to be more expensive to go with the brick. Just add water and wait for that to soften. Now, like I said earlier, you're going to want to mix it with sand. A reptile sand is a viable option, but unfortunately it does tend to come at a premium price, especially when you start purchasing things like the calcium sand that you'll often see at pet stores. So the best option for sand is clay sand, available at Lowe's, Home Depot. Just make sure that that is cleaned and filtered. You can mix them about 50-50, or you could go a little bit more heavy with the tropical soil, but you never want to go too heavy with the clay sand because it is prone to causing impaction. That being said, I think it's obvious never to go with a sand-only substrate, again, citing the reason that it is prone to causing impaction. Another mix that you can do with the coconut fiber as your base would be a bark and coconut fiber mix. You can use coconut husk, which will come in the brick form, add water, and again you'll get a bark or coconut husk sort of end product there once you mix it. Reptibark is another option. It comes in a bag, but I would never recommend the bark and coconut fiber substrates over the coconut fiber and clay sand. But again, it is an option to go with the bark and fiber mix. The fiber is a great base for mixes because it does allow the tortoises to burrow, and it also absorbs moisture so you can keep your substrate moist enough where it won't become dusty and get in the tortoise's eyes. So an important consideration when choosing substrates is to make sure that your tortoises can burrow in it. That's a natural reaction in the wild, so you're certainly going to want to replicate that in your enclosure. Now, another substrate I do want to mention would be the aspen. Aspen is sometimes recommended and is usually recommended for snakes, but it is not a snake-only substrate. In fact, this made by ZoomEd is actually called aspen snake bedding. But that doesn't mean that it's specially formulated for snakes. It's just aspen bedding that can be used for a variety of reptiles. And this you should never use alone. You might be able to mix it, but my favorite idea for the aspen is to keep it in a corner of the enclosure. The tortoises do like to burrow in it, but it should never, again, be used alone. Sometimes it's nice to use it for a basking area because it does get a little bit warmer and it doesn't dry out like the tropical soil or sand would. So that covers aspen and a variety of mixes that you can do with the tropical soil. But usually you do want to mix substrates. Using just one isn't often the best choice. A mix usually combines the best properties of each substrate. Now, the one thing I do want to talk about here is substrates that you shouldn't be using. One of those is rabbit pellets. Those don't work for Russian tortoises. They dry out quickly. And then some of the more obvious unusable substrates are things like newspaper and paper towel. They don't allow the tortoises to burrow and are just generally bad choices for Russian tortoise substrate. Any shredded substrates, all choices that don't work very well at all. Now, in terms of decorative substrates, some people like to go for gravel, but I will never recommend this because tortoises can swallow the small pebbles. It's not the right size, and it really isn't the right texture. It doesn't allow them to burrow. So if you're looking for something decorative, you might want to go for slightly larger stones. The larger stones can't be swallowed by the tortoises, but my favorite choice is even larger than these decorative stones here. A river rock might be large enough to use for a couple of decorative corners, but stone is never an ideal substrate by itself and really should only be used for decorative purposes, and it really isn't very functional for the tortoises. Also, something that's kind of nice and decorative is the Bermuda grass, which is nice because the tortoises can also nibble on this. You might see a picture of chinchillas, rabbits on the front, but it does work for the tortoises. And other options are Timothy hay, which tends to be a bit more popular than the Bermuda grass, but both work for the tortoises. So in conclusion, you want to stick with substrates that can absorb moisture, that can be used for burrowing, and often those choices can be the coconut fiber and sand mix or another mix with the coconut fiber. But again, the best, and I can't say this enough, would be the coconut fiber and sand. Then there are also a couple of different substrates like the aspen and the Bermuda grass that work well for decorative touches or corners of the enclosure. And there you have it. That just about does it for Russian tortoise substrate choices.